Welcome back to Queen's Moves. This is week 2. This is session 2, and I'm excited to re-record this for you. I'm trying to record them live, but technical difficulties. So I re-record with more insight because the live sessions have been so informative that I've been able to incorporate some of the feedback and the comments and discussion when I share it with you in the recorded replay. So I'm excited to share with you what we're going to talk about today is competitive intelligence. And the first move that we wanted to lay out for the strategy is moving from pain to passion to position. And then leveraging that information against the competitive intelligence available to you with an understanding of the environment you work in, the people that you interact with, and then taking all that information to develop your own personal strategy. And then starting to learn how to think strategically, because you're always gathering this information. It's always available to you, but sometimes we just keep our heads down and we don't pay attention. So what we're going to talk about is, making that kind of stuff happen and just training our mind to think differently. So let me share my screen and we will get started. I want to make sure I stay on time. So as we had said last week, chess is really not always about winning. Chess is about learning, and so is life. And that's what I want to continue to keep driving home, is that just like in chess, people play this as a lifetime game because there's a million different versions of what scenarios are available. Life has so many scenarios. The question is, are we learning how to be adaptive and flexible and incorporate the information that we gain as we make our moves? The board on which we play, I'm going to also keep driving this home. There's a complex ecosystem of people, information, positions that we interact with on a daily basis. If we're trying to position ourselves for promotion in the workplace, we have to be aware of those things. And each one of these arrows actually represents a relationship or communication path, some connection. And just being able to intentionally put out what you want to get back. So put out in those information channels the information you want to get back, whether it's by conversation, through behavior and brand development, through strategic information, just putting your best foot forward, addressing things you need to address when they come up. Just being mindful of the board on which you play every day is going to be critical to being able to cultivate a strategic mindset, and that's really the goal of this series. So as I said earlier, the first move is moving through 3P to CI, and for me that means moving through your pain, which we're going to talk about, which on the live session was incredibly informative. Finding your passion and understanding position, which are 3 foundational building blocks for being able to understand what you're working with so you can develop your own strategy. So leveraging competitive intelligence is the other piece, and that's about what interactions you have around you that you're going to need the information from your pain, and clarifying that to be able to perform best, to make the best next move. So this is all about chess. I love that game. And I'm learning a little bit more about it every day. But in chess, the queen, or any piece, some of the pieces can jump, but the queen particularly cannot jump over a piece. So as you can see from this diagram, they can move in any direction. But when it gets to a piece, it has to stop. And that's what I'm referring to as barriers. Those barriers are opportunities, truly. In chess, the queen has to move and pause, just like all the pieces. But you move and you pause, and you move and you pause. And I say the pause because it's really not a stop, because you're waiting for the counter move of the opponent. So in life, you move, you assess, you rethink, you reposition, and you move again. So why do I call those things, those barriers, those times where you have to pause, and life does create those positions and situations where you have to pause? It's really an opportunity to dig into your inspiration, identify opportunities for creativity, initiative, and really reflect on your strategy and possibly develop the next strategic insight for your next move. So again, just be mindful of that. Again, when you hit a barrier or a piece on the board, for example, with pain, that requirement for pause is a clear indicator, right? Like you can't really, when something stops you, it requires reflection. Sometimes it's just a hard stop, which is a surprise, or some information you weren't aware of, and you just sort of surprised. But sometimes it's painful to stop because your forward momentum, your expectations aren't being met. What you thought was going to happen isn't happening. What you thought to be true isn't true. What your scenario you played out in your mind isn't the real scenario that's taking place. Those things cause confusion and pain and discomfort. I can say for me, it's funny that the past few years I've been intuitively kind of realizing that my expectations and my reality weren't in alignment. I thought I'd be in a different place in my career by now. Although I'm not unhappy with where I am, I thought I would be in a different place. And so I look at some of the achievements that I've had and some of the great positions that I've had. And then I'm also mindful of the fact that my own personal insecurities have kept me from taking advantage of some opportunities and pushing myself out front versus being in a supportive role. And that has hindered some opportunities because people weren't aware of what I could bring to the table because I didn't push myself out there to take those chances. And so the feelings of discomfort and resentment or just concern are indicators. And those indicators made me have to think deeper about, well, where is that coming from? And when I figured out where it was coming from, now I can start to put in place some strategies to build up the areas of weakness that I have, to seek out opportunities to put myself in situations even like this. This has been years and years and years I've been doing this one-on-one, but I was uncomfortable with sharing this information with the public. But now that I've been clear about why I can do this and take this chance to put this out there. So I'm encouraging you to, when you feel pain or discomfort, realize that it's an indicator and not all wounds are visible. So it doesn't always mean that you're acting out, that you're crying, that you're behaving badly. There's just sometimes internal triggers that cause us to be reflective and think, and we need to be mindful of them because they are indicators of something that is worth our attention. One of the things that's interesting, you all know people like this. I know people like this that when they're not comfortable with emotion and they're not comfortable with the discomfort, so they push it down, they ignore it, it's not happening, I'm fine, everything's great. They may find themselves kind of eking out poor behaviors because they just don't want to deal with it, but it's still there. It doesn't mean you're not dealing with it. It just means that you don't want to talk about it. I'm not proposing that you always have to talk about it, but I do advocate for getting it out. And that's why I'm a strong advocate for journaling. Journaling is critical in processing. In order to have a good strategy, you have to process. There's no taking, there's nothing else you can even replace that time with. Strategy has to be thought about, talked about, discussed, worked out. So again, people typically push it down. It's not good for you. Your body can't stand it. It doesn't want to deal with that. So barriers, like we discussed, could be external, people, places, and things. Get curious, and that will drive some of this reflection. Don't judge yourself as much as get curious about what is this pain that has kind of stirred something up. Just get curious about it and ask why and what, not who, and sometimes it is who, but don't get so caught up on judging yourself for feeling the pain. more get involved in figuring out what the root issue is. So here's some key questions that you can ask to get to the root. What do I need to learn about the situation that's causing me some discomfort? What do I need to learn about these people that I'm interacting with that may be making me uncomfortable? Am I not understanding where they're coming from? What drivers are impacting them? Just do I not know how they communicate? There's just a lot of different things you can ask around that question as well. What do I need to learn about myself is the most important thing, because you can only control what you can control, and you know you can control yourself, which ultimately makes you the master of your own destiny. So again, when you get curious, some of these trigger questions to help you get clear and to start journaling are: what do I need to learn about the situation? What do I need to learn about these people? And what do I need to learn about myself? Another area of barriers is the internal feelings, thoughts, and beliefs. I'm guilty of not being comfortable with emotion. I'm emotional, but I'm not comfortable with emotion. And I say that I'm not comfortable with PDAs, and I love the hug, but I'm not. It's not a transparent, heartfelt, transparent thing. It's more I just love people, and I care about them, but I'm not necessarily as open with how I feel. And so I'm learning that has helped to keep me from doing some things as well. So I'm starting to get comfortable with emotion. I cannot do this, can't talk to you if I don't get comfortable with the fact that this is an exchange and it's going to require some emotional connection in order for it to really be successful, which means I have to be a lot more transparent and share with you some of the things that I've gone through in order to kind of resonate and build that rapport and connection. So one of the most interesting things, and as you go through this process of preparing your personal strategy, preparing to think about where you need to be, it's as you get uncomfortable, it's just a part of the process to get comfortable. And what you'll find as you dig deeper and deeper and deeper is 9 times out of 10, at the root of your discomfort, your pain, your frustration, your concern, is this real question of, am I enough? I can tell you that question, I can win in several areas of my life and several scenarios that I'm playing out or several situations that I find myself in, and then be hit hard with some insecurity that surprised me. And at the root of it is, am I enough? I'll give you an example. I moved north, going through situating myself and getting connected to people, and I get a phone call, and it triggered, oh my God, did I make the right decision? Oh my God, what have I done? And can I survive? And why would I think that? Of course I can. I've planned this. I am employed. I have a process and a plan I'm working through. What would make me feel that way by simply having an exchange? Well, because this person that I was speaking to actually has always kind of made me feel less than. And even though I was not in that person's presence 99% of the time because I've moved now, it brought up an emotional memory that took me back to, oh my God, am I enough? Which then started to undermine some of my current activities. So what I'm saying in that is you can have a lot of success and still have some areas of thoughts, feelings, or beliefs that you have to kind of address when they come up. But if you've kind of done some reflection, you've got a journal, and you're thinking about why and how and starting to kind of be intentional about how you engage in life, these moments don't overtake you, but they are, again, indicators that there's an area to take care of. There's a situation that you might need to be more mindful and look forward through. This just made me think, oh my goodness, if this can make me insecure, where is that coming from? But on the flip side of that, because I was able to recognize that it made me insecure really quickly, I was able to bounce back quicker. And for me, that represented success and progress, because I used to go down in the dark hole and just be down there for a minute and just, what? But again, progress is being able to be reflective, adapt, get back in the game, and move forward. I was listening to Oprah and Brene Brown, who is, I think her subject of expertise is courage. There was a podcast, I can't recall what it was, and I shared this comment she had written in one of her books. I want to say it's there's Daring Greatly, and then there's some can't recall, but it's Brene Brown, and she was saying that when we take our internal thoughts, feelings, and beliefs and filter our current experience through that and not necessarily reality, it's easy for us to fill in the blanks with our beliefs and ideas. So we have a limited amount of information. Say, somebody walked by you and didn't acknowledge you. And so with your beliefs and ideas, maybe that you believe people should be congenial, right? They should, of course, with respect, speak to everybody that they come in contact with. And this person didn't speak to you. So you may draw the conclusion that they don't respect you, they're inherently rude, and that they have some issue with you personally. And so you start to kind of ruminate on that idea, and then you start to formulate some opinion about them, all from an instance where they didn't speak to you. That's called building your own conspiracy. So the definition of conspiracy is limited data points filled in with beliefs and ideas. So when you find yourself making up those stories, it's really best to take some time to figure out, is it true? It's not always, your first thought is not always true. It's safe and easy for us to make up stuff that just feels good, not necessarily is good. So we constantly have to check ourselves as we start to develop strategies for engagement and connecting and assessing our landscape. Are we telling ourselves the truth, or are we telling ourselves what we want to hear? And you can tell that if it's always about making yourself feel good, then it's really not necessarily always about truth. And it's going to be interesting as we kind of go through this to kind of hear the feedback on how just changing that perspective is helpful or enlightening. So either way, whether they're external or internal, these barriers cannot be dealt with if they're not acknowledged. You can't remove them if you don't acknowledge them. So in the game of chess, the board on which we're playing, when you move your piece, the queen makes her move, and she gets to a point where there's a piece blocking her path, you can't make the next move unless you acknowledge in the pause, what are these pieces doing in relation to my position, and how can I assess my next best move in order to advance my agenda? And that doesn't necessarily always mean taking the piece. So it's not always mean, causing discomfort for someone. But taking the piece could also mean, taking the position, job position. So there's just the idea here is be reflective, be curious about yourself, and know that in order to move through the different barriers, you have to acknowledge them and engage with the information that you find. The other thing is that in order to do this, which is really fun, it's intense. Being a strategist is an intense mental exercise, but it pays off, and it doesn't have to be all the time. You got to learn how to step back in order to develop an effective strategy, and stepping back requires self-discipline. And it's the difference between being proactive and reactive. If you don't step back, you find yourself more in a reactive role than if you step back, look at the board, check out how things are playing out, how you feeling, what you've seen, what you've learned. Because again, this is about learning. If you don't step back, you find yourself in a more reactive nature and less proactive. Now, again, we're thinking about, you've made your move, you've assessed kind of what your feelings are, you've assessed how these feelings are impacting you, who they're impacting, and how you're going to mitigate that and make sure that you're putting out your best possible face, foot, action, brand, whatever. It's always about taking in this information and being able to put yourself in the best position, because God only wants the best for you. So let's just put ourselves in the best position to be able to receive that. So your position determines your perspective. I think I heard that if you find yourself in a difficult situation, consider changing your position and see what it looks like from there. Because, you know, I think there's if we're both looking at a book and I'm looking at the cover and I see a picture of a face of somebody on it and some words, and you're on the other side of the book and you're looking at the book and you see nothing because it's the back of the book, we both can be right. The book, from what my perspective is, I do see what I see. From your perspective, you do see what you see. So sometimes you need to shift to sit in the shoes of the other person that you're dealing with to see if, from their perspective, what they may be saying or seeing or feeling or thinking has some valid validity to it. When you find yourself backed into a corner, again, and you're seeing the book from your side and you can't conceive of any other way to see it, think about how the fact that is really your position that is determining what your available information is. And be curious and figure out, am I getting all that I need to know in order to make the next best move? Again, consider the fact that you may be both looking at the same book from different sides, and shifting your position could help you get in alignment and find agreement and move forward with a lot less confusion. So, positioning. So once you kind of work through your pain, you gotten a little clear, you understand your connection to the other pieces around you or what your next, you've looked at the board from stepping back, and you got the perspective. Now it's about understanding positioning. Understand the position you're in, all the benefits, the flaws, from an objective standpoint, because again, we stepped back now. You're looking at the board from a different perspective. You're taking in different information. You are being realistic about where you actually are, what's really available to you, whether you're controlling the middle of the board, or you're in alignment, you're in your best clear space, and sometimes you're not, and that's fine, but it's about acknowledging that. And then preparing for the position you will be in, because you're going to have to make a move. Life continues to happen. Where are you in your life right now, and where do you want to be? And I constantly go back to that because I'm a journal or a vision board person. You know, I constantly am checking the framework of the space I'm working in because I want to make sure I'm continually progressing. I'm a student, but I can also say that in positioning yourself for career growth, you got to know where you are so you can know where you want to be, so you can know how to connect the dots between the two. So for me, what I'm trying to share with you in positioning is understand from this perspective, so you're 30,000 feet up, where are you? In terms of even in the continuum of your life, when we were having a live conversation, we were talking about where we were in our lives now is different than where we were, say, 10, 15 years ago. And things have changed. Our perspectives have changed. Our priorities have changed. Do we have regrets? Sometimes. But have we learned things? Absolutely. And so that's what I mean. Positioning could be positioning in your personal, professional space. It could be in your life space. But understand where you are so you can prepare for the position that you want to be in. So it's impossible to get clear without acknowledging the chaos. That's just a lesson that I've learned through life, and I think we've all kind of stumbled through the times where we are surprised by our environment, we're thrown off by something, we are emotionally cloudy because there's just so many feelings going on. It's difficult to know what your next best move, and sometimes it's okay to be still. You notice in chess, for example, there's usually a move and then a timer, and a move and then a timer. And there's time taken to consider the next move. And it's okay to do that when it's emotionally cloudy, when it's loud around you, when the information's not clear, when you're it's perfectly reasonable to take a pause. I find that it's also the time when you take the pause, so we're going to move and pause, but when you take the pause, it's where the creativity is, because there's so much going on. You're forced to make a decision, forced to kind of find a solution. And me, a creative problem solver, I love that. I love the getting in the mix of things and trying to fix things and trying to bring resources to people and connect dots. But that is also a chaotic time. So if I haven't set the framework, had a strategy, and I get the chaos, excuse me, I'm not as able to move as quickly. And that comes with time and lessons too. It's really interesting to note that chess is not a quiet game. And strategy is played out in the mind first before it's played out on the board. But just because it's played in the mind doesn't mean that it's not intense and loud and emotional and stressful and all that. But you'll notice that typically in a chess game, the external behaviors are moderated. You'll find some emotional people who, but typically it's a quiet, intense game because the internal struggle is managed on the outside. There's a lot of mental noise in the game of chess, and you'll find in life, as you become more adept at developing strategy, you may appear to be peaceful and confident and present yourself in the most the best light, and sometimes the most confident and strong space. But that doesn't mean that you're not thinking a lot of things, but you learned how to project the right decorum to keep yourself in the right position to create the opportunity for your next move. What does that mean? And you're always being watched and evaluated. You're always being critiqued on some level by somebody around you in order to preserve, and on the board in which we play, so that spaghetti kind of graphic, there's always that connection to a different person or some information. You're always being watched and evaluated, and if you haven't decided what your framework is and you're not playing this game in your mind first, you'll react, and you'll constantly be in kind of an emotional wreck. People watch that, and what we look for in those who are going to have the given more responsibility is the ability to be able to be stable and function under pressure. And that requires management of your physical space, being able to control your mental space so that you can clearly define, decide, make moves, make decisions, do whatever. It's something that's developed over time. And that's, again, why I want to encourage you to start thinking this way and understand that in that space is where you get to create the initiative and the strategies. You're creating up here and you're playing it out in the world. Again, the spaghetti map, these connectors, consider them eyes. All those connectors are eyes. They're always on you, especially if you're trying to find a promotion or move up and maneuver in the workplace, or find that next career move. Just consider those are eyeballs. And you want to be aware so that you can engage in a way that will take you to your next best move. Your position in this space does require that you be kind of grateful, right? Your passion is you're clear with your position because you're taking a step back. You kind of address you indicate your pain, so you're clear in what you're trying to do, and you're poised, you're clear, you're moving. But if you don't have the energy and you don't have a fire in your bones, what's the point? So you got to find your passion. I think we started that with kind of understanding what your personality is and what your values are. So your passion is your due north. It's linked to your due north. It's it makes sure you're on the right path. It's that fire and what lights you up on the inside. And you know you're in the right space when you're able to get lit up when you're engaged. It's like mommies, we're lit up when you say as little babies. When you're an artist, you're lit up when you're in that artistic environment. I'm a problem solver. I know it's a little nerdy, but I really get excited and lit up when I'm solving somebody else's problem. So that passion makes sure I'm going in the right direction. And it is very closely linked to your values. I did the values assessment again this week because I was just really curious to see if anything has changed. Flexibility, stability, and adventure are really important to me right now in my life. And so flexibility means I do some things that make sure I have and remain flexible in my life and able to work from home and do this, right? So I have to understand that being able to do this is going to give me the passion, the energy, the excitement to do the other things that I may not have as much passion for, but I know that are required to get to my next space. So your passion makes room for you. I think there's a scripture that says your gifts will make room for you. And what that means is that when you're good at something, it draws attention to you. And people like to be around people who are happy and good at what they do. And so they create opportunities for you to be able to do that more. So I encourage you to be passionate because it brings positive attention to you that pushes you into this next space, whatever that next space is. So your passion can be anything that intrigues you or motivates you and makes you, again, light up on the inside and you're so excited. But it doesn't, people say, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. You will work a day. It just won't feel like work because your passion you're not passionate about sitting on the couch. 9 times out of 10, you're not passionate about just standing. You're passionate about some sort of engagement, some sort of activity, some sort of engagement on some level, intellectual, physical, spiritual. And doing that makes you want to do it because it gives you energy. Then that energy creates momentum, and that momentum makes room for you because people want to be around that. But the other thing is, if you're really passionate about something, say art or running, or even work, you'll sacrifice something to do what you're passionate about. And that's a positive. And why you need to know what that is because why not leverage that for yourself to give yourself more momentum to go where you want to go. So find out what that passion is, find out what those links are, connect to them, and use them like a catapult to push you forward. In chess, one of the interesting things is that you should allow the center to be occupied by the pieces. And once you have that, you have mastered chess in a nutshell. I put that statement on this slide because your passion is energy and it is excitement. And if you're not careful, you'll let your passion run rampant like a bull in a china closet, thinking that you have to be passionate about everything all the time. So if I'm not passionate, I don't want to do it. You miss the power of your passion if you don't understand that it's in the allowing of it to be channeled that it's most useful. Just having fun for the sake of having fun doesn't necessarily produce anything. It's having fun at something that will produce a positive outcome is when that's the best use of fun. And fun, so therefore fun becomes a reward in and of itself, and it becomes a reward in an outcome that helps those around you. So again, in chess, it's easy to want to just wipe out and just jump over, take all the pieces, but you miss the power of the game and the nuances of the game if you don't allow the center of the board to play out and not just worried about making sure that your king doesn't get taken from the back, or somebody sacrificing all the pawns real quick and trying to take everything with the pawns. You're missing the power of the nuances of moving different pieces into the center of the board to protect the space. So again, passion is valuable, but it's valuable when it's used in when it's leveraged for your good and not just pursued for the sake of being pursued. So now that you know about yourself, you know about how to assess your pain, how to get curious and get clear about your pain, how to position yourself and at least assess your position in life or in the scenarios that you're in, and you have linked that information to informing how you tap into your passion and how you leverage that. So you're kind of clear and you got your mind right. Now it's going to be about how do you interact with the world. The first step is getting you right, but now you got to get how you interact with the world right, because that's where it starts to get fun, to be honest. I mean, you can spend a lot of time doing self-reflection and self-analysis. Kind of boring after a while as a hobby, but in the self-help, but as a necessary component in developing strategy. It's an area of interest, but it's only one of many. So this other part is interacting with everything around you. And that requires taking in data about the space around you. Space meaning the coworkers, the culture, the organization, the industry, the positions available, knowing who's successful, why they're successful, just trending, what's trending in your industry, monitoring that through Twitter or the news or whatever, taking in data, all the way down to the nuances of how people interact with each other, how people communicate, how people communicate with you, how your family, so take it out of the workspace. How are things in your family legacy? What are environmental factors in how you guys get together, when you get together, who comes when people get together? Just data points like that help you to remain kind of objective and be able to take all the information about yourself and can start to connect it to how does this cause me to trigger or act or not react. So, and you'll notice on the bottom right here, collecting data is one component. Analyzing the data is another component. Having a plan is a third component, and then implementing that plan is a fourth component. Data is used for all of that. Those of us who are strategists by hobby constantly think like this all the time. It's just all the time. But it allows you to have some semblance of control around how you behave and where you end up. But it also is kind of fun. For me anyway, it's fun to unlock that kind of information and find the nuggets of truth in the information that is found. So all of those pieces of information together make up competitive intelligence. This is, again, how you interact with the world. And competitive in this space is, it could be competing for promotion. It could be competing with yourself to do better than you did last week. It could be competing with information, right? So it just could be the art of getting better at developing strategy is a competition in and of itself, because every move is a counter move. And so competitive is not always about winning. It's about engaging at a high level so that you could position yourself for whatever your next best move is. So competitive intelligence is understanding and learning what is happening in the world outside the business, right? What are the factors in the environment, or yourself, what's going on around you, to increase your competitivity. I said it right. It means learning as much as possible, as soon as possible, about one's external environment, including one's industry in general, and as it relates to relevant competitors. So a big mouthful, but really just means know what's going on around you. And then know and filter that information against what you're really trying to achieve, and start connecting the dots and aligning things. So on the left, you'll see pretty much, unless you're a strategic thinker, you think of chess in the way most people do. It's just basic. It's either I'm attacking or I'm defending. Either you're with me or you're not. Or you can think it's all strategy, and it's not about attacking, it's just strategy and defense. Or you could think strategy and attack. But it's, again, one-dimensional. There are people who live like that. It's either you're for me or you're against me. It's either win or lose. Or it's either I like you or I don't. Well, life is a little more complicated than that. And there's a lot more information available to make more nuanced decisions than either you like me or you don't. Maybe you would like me in another scenario. If we were outside of work, we probably could get along better. But because of the dynamic of our positions, we don't get along because we don't work well together. That doesn't mean we couldn't hang out together, and vice versa. So there's a lot of nuances that it can't always be just I like you or I don't. It's dependent on how much information, what are we talking about. So again, chess has a lot more layers. Chess actually is about preserving the king's safety, which means moving the pieces around that. It's about understanding tactics to neutralize your opponent and control some of the center of the board. It's about attack and defense, moving and shaking. It's about middle games. It's about strategy. So there's a lot of layers in chess, just like there's a lot of layers in life. And we shouldn't, when we're trying to position ourselves to be strategists, think in one dimension. We have to start thinking in multiple dimensions and be smart about our next best move. So what I'm hoping that you're gaining from these conversations is how to shift from just knowing things to knowing how to use that information to ultimately wisdom, which is how to interpret the information and maneuver with it so that it's a win-win. It's and being able to teach someone else. At the point that you get wisdom, you can teach someone else. So knowledge, again, is about being aware and having information. It's the what of things. Intelligence is the application of knowledge. So I'm hoping that I'm sharing with you information that's knowledge for you. You're going to start to apply it or connect the dots with how you've been seeing things, and you'll find you have an intelligence about strategy. You have an awareness and how you know how it works. But once you start to enact it and implement it and use that data and make some moves based on assessment, analysis, planning, positioning, you start to interpret the reactions of those around you, and so you start to be able to be more fluid in your strategy execution, and that's where you achieve wisdom. It's very similar in the game of chess where, you're novice. There's always a novice in any game. You're always going to start as a novice. You're aware of how the pieces move, but you've not moved them yet. But you read the book. You know how how things should move, and so you move them. But then you start to realize how those moves impact each other, and you start to move more carefully. And then you can see as someone starts to really understand the game and become proficient, they actually play in their mind a lot more before they play on the board. And again, in this process, I hope and I believe that you will start to shift in those different ways from being aware to kind of engaging and knowing more how, and then start moving to being able to show someone else how to play this game called life. So